Just so infuriating. It's so infuriating. I am so angry.
Yeah.
That they put in this much time and money to push a message of a problem that is a problem that they recognize, and then they're part of it.
Hello and welcome to my channel, or welcome back. I know that I have been gone for a while. I just got busy, sorry guys. But hopefully now I can be a little bit more consistent. So if you've been here a while, you might remember back when we covered the Fab Fatties, a trio of self-described fat activists, Alyssa, Allie, and Rebecca. They host a podcast where they share their takes on body image, health, weight loss, and fat politics. I covered them once before, back when they still had their fourth member. And just as I was thinking that it might be time to revisit them, one of you guys reached out and suggested that I take a look at this episode in particular. And I have to say, it did not disappoint. So first off, thank you so much to that subscriber. I really do appreciate it. And if there's ever anything that you guys want me to take a look at specifically, definitely let me know down in the comments below. Or you can also reach me through my Instagram. I'm not really posting anything relevant or important there, but if you'd rather not leave a public comment, my DMs are open over there. Might regret that later, but for now, oh well. Anyway, today we're diving into one of their semi-recent episodes. I guess it's not so recent anymore, but at the time they were reacting to some trending topics, including a Superbowl commercial from Hims and Hers that was promoting a compounded GLP-1 medication for weight loss. The Fab Fatties also discussed the online bullying of Millie Bobby Brown, drawing parallels between the body shaming that she has been facing and their own negative comments to their podcast. And finally, as any good fat activist would do, they discuss the limitations with plus size fashion, specifically taking a look at Samira's rant about Forever 21 and a collaboration between Universal Standard and Anthropology. There's a lot to get into today, but before we really dive in, let's hear a word from today's sponsor, Coupert. Hey guys, so quick pause, because if you're anything like me, you've probably spent way too much time at checkout Googling for promo codes and discounts. Or you just cross your fingers and pray for a discount code to magically appear. Spoiler, that doesn't work. But Coupert does. Coupert is a free browser extension that does all the coupon hunting for you automatically. No copy and pasting, no weird coupon sites, and no expired discount codes. All you have to do is click on the extension at checkout, press apply coupon, and Coupert will test every available code and apply the best one for you. Coupert works with over 200,000 merchants to give you the best deals wherever you go. And if that wasn't enough, Coupert also offers cashback rewards from stores like Temu and Macy's, and over 76,000 other retailers. The more you shop and use Coupert, the more you save and the more you earn. And here's the best part, the price comparison tool. While you're browsing, Coupert is silently working in the background, bringing up websites where you might find a better deal, making sure that you don't overpay without realizing it. Coupert will work with Google Chrome, Edge, Firefox, Opera, and Safari on desktop, and Safari on mobile. And with over 6 million weekly users, you know they're really onto something. So if you want to stop paying full price online, click the link in my description below to install Coupert now. It only takes a few seconds and it'll pay for itself on your first checkout. So before you leave this video, make sure to install Coupert today and never pay full price again. So as I was saying, the first thing that the Fab Fatties are discussing is this Hims and Hers commercial that was played during the Super Bowl. And according to the Fab Fatties, this commercial was not only hypocritical, but also racist. And well, let's just watch it first and then hear what the Fab Fatties have to say about it. And I'm just gonna do a voiceover of the commercial because they were playing copyrighted music throughout it, so that's that. Obesity is America's deadliest epidemic. 74% of us are overweight, and obesity leads to 500,000 deaths each year. Why, you just have to stop eating, Jimmy. Something's broken, and it's not our bodies, it's the system. Welcome to weight loss in America, a $160 billion industry that feeds on our failure. There are medications that work, but they're priced for profits, not patients. This system wasn't built to help us. It was built to keep us sick and stuck, but not anymore. Hims and Hers offers life-changing weight loss medications. They're affordable, doctor trusted, and formulated in the USA. You get a treatment plan designed by a doctor to fit your body, goals, and lifestyle. You deserve to feel great in your body. This is the future of healthcare. This is Hims and Hers. Join us in the fight for a healthier America. Okay, so I'll let the Fab Fatties give their take on this first, but I do want to mention that I do have some problems with this ad and their messaging. I'm not 100% for or against GLP-1 medications or even compounded variations of it. I feel like I'm very down the middle on this one. These girls, on the other hand, well, they have very emotional reactions, with Rebecca describing the whole room going silent when the commercial came on.
I mean, my first thought I came to was like when I watched it, right? I was at a Superbowl party with all thin-bodied people, and this commercial comes on, and as soon as the belly flop hits the very beginning, I'm like, oh, I'm the audience member for this one. I'm the audience member. And everyone else in this room is also watching this commercial. Because, you know, Super Bowl, everyone watched the commercials. Like, we're there to see the impactful commercials.
Yeah.
And it gets quiet. And it's quiet. And I'm like, so I've heard some people say they didn't know where this was going. I knew at the belly flop it wasn't going anywhere that I wanted to go.
Immediate.
Is it weird that I think it's weird that she points out that she was specifically with all these thin-bodied people? I get that she was trying to emphasize that she was like the biggest one in the room or one of the biggest people in the room, but this phrasing really emphasizes her perception of her own otherness. She's starting her story reinforcing that divide by pointing it out so sharply. It kind of sets the tone that she expects to be judged by the people around her. That point aside, her experience here of the room going silent and being singled out almost as though she was being put in a spotlight in front of her group of friends, I don't know whether that in fact really happened or that was just her perception of the events. Not saying that her feelings were any less valid, so to say, but it's a really common experience to feel like all eyes are on you and you're being judged by the people around you, when that's often not the case. For example, a lot of people are scared to even start going to the gym because they have this perception that everyone else is going to be staring at them, judging them, or even laughing at them. And lots of people make these assumptions that the strangers around them are silently judging them, when in reality, no one cares. For the most part, they're all too focused on themselves to really care what you're doing. So while yes, this can be a very real feeling that you're experiencing, or even a very real fear that you have, that doesn't mean that your assumption on what strangers are thinking is actually true. What I'm saying here is that this reaction by Rebecca during this commercial sounds more like a psychological reaction rather than an objective truth, likely just a projection rather than a reflection of reality. And interestingly, the next clip that we're going to see from Alyssa carries the same sort of feeling, just packaged slightly differently.
I've been quiet because I need to take the space for the full rant in which this commercial actually deserves from me.
Go for it.
And I want to start out with that I actually didn't know what this commercial was going to be. There was no inkling from me at all. I was actually incredibly shocked that we were having a commercial starting to call out diet culture at the Super Bowl. I'm like, oh, that's huge. And literally everything, we were at home, Billy, my parents, my grandmother were watching, and everyone froze and we're all just watching. And we're like, okay.
So once again, we have this idea of the whole room freezing. Time just stops and everyone was just bracing themselves. And look, I understand that these women are in bodies that are routinely judged by the society. I'm not ignoring that, but there's a pattern here of taking this deeply personal reaction and sort of universalizing it, like assuming that this ad must be targeting them and that it therefore must be inherently harmful and that it must be scrutinized under this lens of collective trauma. And because of those assumptions and maybe some past experiences, the immediate reaction to this commercial is very emotional, with Alyssa struggling to articulate just how upsetting this ad was for her.
This commercial is just so infuriating. It's so infuriating and it's so harmful and it's so infuriating. Did I say infuriating?
You might have mentioned
say it a few more times. It's fine. It's infuriating.
I am so angry.
Yeah.
That they put in this much time and money to push a message of a problem that is a problem that they recognize, and then they're part of it.
So yeah, clearly a very emotional response. However, just because somebody reacts with emotion, that doesn't mean that their opinions are automatically invalid. Like, the hysterical woman may be overreacting, but that doesn't make her wrong. And like I said before, there are some valid criticisms of this commercial, starting with the company's motivation to first off run the ad, but also be selling these weight loss medications in general. Unlike what the Hims and Hers commercial is trying to portray, trying to show that they want to help Americans and be part of the solution to this obesity epidemic by selling their weight loss medications. Instead, the real motivation behind the Hims and Hers commercial, like with any company, is the same: money.
I thought it was interesting that the way they packaged it as like a sick society, and a sick society who can't access the medication, which made me think like, ooh, they want to put pressure on the insurance companies to give them a way in, or they want to make pressure on that. And even with all of that, they still don't actually say how they make it affordable, and it's because it's not affordable. But yeah, they want to say like, hey, you can't get it through your insurance, come to us.
Yeah. And
I'm part of this $180 billion, whatever it was, $160 billion industry, but we're the good ones.
Yeah. I love how they started it out, right? They started it out making you think they're one of the good ones, right? They're one of the good ones. We're one of the good ones. We know what these guys are doing. It's them. They're part of the $160 billion, weight loss medical industry, like whatever. It's them. It's not us. But guess what we have? A weight loss drug. So it is you. It is you. You just started it out to make us feel like we were potentially safe in this space, and then just completely, flipped it on its head.
Kind of silly to think that a Super Bowl commercial would be able to create a safe space for you. However, I'll let that one slide, because this is where I start to actually agree with the Fab Fatties a little bit. Because yeah, I thought it was kind of bizarre for the Hims and Hers company to call out this $160 billion weight loss industry just to say, hey, we know this is a $160 billion industry and we want a piece of that. And we know that you guys are going to pay for what we've got because insurance won't cover you, or it's going to be way more expensive through insurance, or for you to pay out of pocket for the name brands like Ozempic and Wegovy. And I know that these drugs are all expensive, but name brand ones like Ozempic and Wegovy are going to be more expensive than these knockoff compounded medications from brands like Hims and Hers. But even those are still inaccessible to many people who would benefit from them. But putting out this messaging that they're trying to help Americans by offering this more affordable option while running a Super Bowl commercial. Do you know how expensive a Super Bowl commercial ad is? Clearly, they aren't saving you money by cutting advertisement costs. That's for sure. And I don't think that a company necessarily needs to say how they make their product more affordable in a commercial. I think that's a bit of an unrealistic expectation for advertisements in general. But in this particular case, I think that this context is important. Because let's talk a little bit more about how companies like Hims and Hers make GLP-1 weight loss medications more affordable. This is going to be a really brief rundown. We're not going to get into all the nitty-gritty, just enough to get an idea of what's going on here. So let's start with the name brand drugs. And there are two major companies when it comes to GLP-1 medications: Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly. Novo Nordisk sells Ozempic for type 2 diabetes and Wegovy for weight loss. And similarly, Eli Lilly sells Mounjaro for diabetes and Zepbound for weight loss. The key difference between these two companies is their active ingredient. So in Novo Nordisk, the GLP-1 that is used is semaglutide. And so for the drugs Ozempic and Wegovy, which are both produced by Novo Nordisk, they both use the active ingredient semaglutide, just in different doses. And for the medications sold by Eli Lilly, Mounjaro and Zepbound, they both use the GLP-1 tirzepatide. Again, just in different doses for the two medications. And I know if you're new to this is a lot of names. But in essence, we have two companies with two different GLP-1 medications, semaglutide and tirzepatide. And those are the FDA approved options. But now what's going on with companies like Hims and Hers? Because they can't legally sell Ozempic or Wegovy. Those are patented and can only be distributed by Novo Nordisk. Instead, what these companies are selling is what's called a compounded medication, custom-made versions produced by compounding pharmacies. What that means is that the pharmacy will take the base ingredient, either tirzepatide or semaglutide, and they'll make their own formulation from scratch. Sometimes they'll add extra ingredients, but they don't necessarily have to. But either way, the final product is not FDA approved. So how is that even legal? Well, in certain circumstances, most notably when a drug is in short supply, a compounded version of the drug done by a licensed pharmacy is totally okay. And for a while now, the medications by both Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly have been in short supply. And that's how these compounding pharmacies have been able to legally distribute compounded variations of GLP-1 medications. But as of February 18th, the FDA declared that tirzepatide, the active ingredient in Eli Lilly's Mounjaro and Zepbound, is no longer in short supply. That means that pharmacies are no longer legally allowed to compound it. So that means that for companies like Hims and Hers, they can no longer legally distribute any compounded variations of tirzepatide. That said, semaglutide is still listed as being in short supply. So compounded variations of that drug are likely going to stick around for a while more. But is compounded semaglutide even bad? I mean, the base ingredient, semaglutide, is FDA approved. So what's the big deal? Well, the issue is in the final product, the thing that you inject into your body. As I mentioned, the final product isn't FDA approved, meaning that it isn't subjected to the same rigorous testing as something like Ozempic and Wegovy. It's not regulated by the FDA for safety, purity, dosage, or even effectiveness. There's no standardized formula across pharmacies, and the sourcing of the base ingredients, often from overseas, isn't as tightly regulated. A lot of these pharmacies will proudly say that their medications are compounded in the USA, but their base ingredients are often coming from places like China. That doesn't automatically make them bad, but it does increase risk. Risk of things like impurities, contamination, or even mislabeled ingredients. So yes, compounded medications are often cheaper, but they also come with added risk. All this being said, I am not a doctor, and I'm definitely not your doctor. I'm just trying to break things down in an understandable way so that we can talk about some fat ladies on the internet with a microphone. My opinions on Ozempic or even compounded medications is mixed. I think that they've helped a lot of people in very significant ways. I think that they can be life-changing or even life-saving for some people. But I also think that there's a lot of known and unknown risks that are being a bit downplayed. I don't think that they should be as heavily marketed as they are. And I don't think that people who only need to lose a small or even moderate amount of weight should be taking these types of drugs, given the potential side effects. I also have found it really weird that any prescription drug can be marketed on a commercial. I think that drugs should be prescribed by your doctor, and I've always found these ads about ask your doctor about miracle drug XYZ. I've always found those super strange and just backwards. But I'm also not in a position to offer any sort of resolution to these conflicting opinions that I have. I'm just talking my thoughts, okay? But at the very least, I think that the potential risk and potential side effects of drugs should be clearly communicated to patients, especially when they're being advertised directly to the public. And in the US, that's not just a personal opinion, that's a legal requirement. According to FDA regulations, an advertisement for a prescription drug must include a fair balance of information. That means that the ad must include both the benefits as well as the risks, including potential side effects, in a clear and non-misleading way, which the Fab Fatties actually kind of touch on as well.
And yet, again, where's the talk about what it does to the body? Where's the talk about the fact that you have to stay on it for pretty much the rest of your life to have at least the weight loss results of it, right? Because when you go off of it, you're no longer going to get some of those hormones replaced, and you're going to be having feelings of hunger and all those things.
Okay, first off, GLP-1 medications are not hormone replacement therapy. They do not replace hormones. They mimic or enhance hormones that your body already produces. And what I think that the Fab Fatties are trying to compare this to is something like testosterone, which is a hormone. And when you start to take a hormone like testosterone, your body will start to produce less of it on its own. But that doesn't seem to be the case with these GLP-1 medications, at least in the research that I was able to find. So as for Rebecca's claim that you have to stay on these medications for life, that's not entirely true, although that is a controversial subject. There is evidence that for some people, once they stop taking the GLP-1 medication, their hunger quickly returns with a vengeance and they gain a lot of the weight back. That's a very real possibility, but it's not guaranteed. Some people are able to maintain a significant amount of weight loss even after they stop taking the drug. It really depends on the individual, both their biology, their habits, their goals, and their lifestyle in general. I do think it's important to understand the potential outcomes of going on a GLP-1 and eventually the possibility of going off the GLP-1, but I also don't think it's fair to present this as though once you go off the drug, you're immediately going to gain everything back and there's nothing you can do about it. That's not accurate, and it very much reads as fear-mongering. However, should the Hims and Hers commercial have mentioned some of these long-term potential side effects, like potentially needing to stay on the drug for the rest of your life? Should it have disclosed common side effects like nausea? Yeah, absolutely it should have. This ad did not include the fair balance of information that the FDA requires. Things like possible side effects and safety risk. The way they got around this was by not mentioning any specific medication by name. They just vaguely referenced weight loss treatments and highlighted that they sell many different compounded medications. And so by being so non-specific, they apparently dodged these FDA regulations. And according to the company, they did nothing wrong.
Hims and Hers defending their ad.
This is Americans affected by a medical disease, and it's getting worse. And I don't believe the company did anything wrong. There are very strict laws on what you need to say in a commercial and whatnot. I do believe in this commercial, no drug was ever mentioned by name.
Is that shady? In my opinion, yes, but I digress.
And I think the hardship I'm personally coming up against is the idea that if you're fat, you should just be on it and you should just figure out the money for it and deal with the side effects of it. And that often was put with weight loss surgery too, except for with weight loss surgery, people understood a little bit more that it was a drastic thing to do to your body. And now like, oh, this isn't a big deal. Like, just shoot yourself up and it's not a big deal. You know, like I just think people think it's not a big deal. And I'm like, it is a big deal.
Oh, and we will be hearing way more about GLP-1s soon. Mm-hmm. We're going to hear about the long-term side effects for folks who don't have problems with their A1C and taking it and what that looks like.
Okay, so I do agree that these GLP-1 medications, both the name brand and the compounded variations, they all seem to be marketed as this easy and low risk option. The downsides and potential risks and stories about people who have had bad outcomes or even died while on the drug, those things aren't talked about so much. I still think that taking a medication like Wegovy is lower risk than doing something like weight loss surgery, especially for the super morbidly obese, where any form of anesthesia is very, very dangerous. It just makes sense to me that a injectable drug that you can just stop taking would be lower risk than going under the knife. But I don't know, maybe as more time passes and more information comes out, I'll change my mind. But for now at least, these drugs seem to be the least invasive and least risky option for somebody considering something as drastic as weight loss surgery. But besides the discussion about the potential risks of these drugs, Allie also mentioned that she felt like the general public consensus was that if you are fat, just ignore the risks, find the money, and get on these drugs somehow. And I definitely don't agree with that message, if that truly were what the public messaging was. But I think that this is actually more of those fake assumptions that we were talking about earlier. It's all just a projection of what Allie thinks that strangers are thinking. And just like the example that I gave earlier about people at the gym, I don't think anyone actually thinks this way. This is about a balance of risk. If you are severely overweight or obese, and you've tried every diet and done everything on your own and yet still struggled with your weight, putting yourself at higher risk for developing things like diabetes, heart disease, and an early death, if the risk of staying how you are now is higher than the risk of considering something like weight loss meds, then yeah, I think it might be worth it for some people to ask themselves, can I afford this medication? Or will my insurance cover this medication? And could this be a life-changing or life-saving option for me? That doesn't mean that people are being told that they must take it. It just means that now it's on the table, and for some people, it might be worth considering. And then right at the end, Ali sneaks in there. We'll be hearing more about the risks of people taking this for people who don't have high A1C levels. This really feels like she's trying to draw a line between people who deserve to take a weight loss medication and those who don't. As though it's okay to take the drugs if you're taking it for your pre-diabetes or diabetes, but if you're taking it for weight loss, suddenly that's not okay. And somehow that group of people that are taking it for weight loss are at a higher risk for developing these potential side effects, which is interesting because Ali herself is on a GLP-1 medication for what she describes as her type 3 diabetes, something I already addressed in my previous video on these lovely ladies.
I am not type 2 diabetic. I am currently have a type 3 diabetic diagnosis, which is why she felt like it was the right medication.
I'm not a doctor, but type 3 diabetes is not something that can be diagnosed. And if she does have type 3 diabetes, that is extremely scary because that would imply at the young age of, I believe she's 25 only, that she's experiencing symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. As for risks, current data doesn't show any huge difference between people taking GLP-1 medication for diabetes versus people taking it for weight loss. The most common side effects across the board include nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, constipation, and loss of appetite. There are more serious side effects too, like pancreatitis, gallbladder issues, or thyroid tumors even, but the potential of those risks apply whether or not you're taking the drug for diabetes or for weight loss. So drawing this line about who can take the drug, whether it's for diabetes or for weight loss, doesn't make any medical sense.
It's like we've already heard for those who are taking it for weight loss, when they stop taking the medication, they gain the weight back, and some, because
Just
that's
like
what your body does.
Any other diet, because they don't work.
100%. So GLP-1s now will be a hot topic point for a long time, but I do think the dialogue around them will change as more research and studies are done and what it looks like.
Like I mentioned earlier, I don't like this framing that going off a GLP-1 medication, or really coming off of any diet for that matter, just automatically makes you gain all the weight back and then some, as if that's just what bodies do, and that's not accurate. What actually happens is when you go off of a GLP-1 medication, your hunger returns. And if you go back to eating the way you were eating before the medication, then you'll go back to the way your body was before the medication. And the same goes for a diet. If you only go on a diet rather than making a lifestyle change, your weight loss will not be permanent. You need to continue the habits that got you there to keep the changes that you worked for. This isn't some mysterious or malicious thing that your body just does to sabotage you. It's just basic cause and effect. Now, in this next clip, the Fab Fatties get upset over a statistic about how many Americans are overweight or obese because they reject the BMI altogether.
I think the biggest thing that sticks out to me is just really in the very beginning of that, 74% of Americans are overweight. According to what, everybody? The BMI. According to the BMI, which is what, everybody? Inherently racist. So until we get rid of the BMI, which is not an actual indicator of health, my nose is running. That's how upset I am.
I was going to say, the inherently from racist roots is one thing. The other factor is doctors and research has shown is not an indicator of health over and over and over again.
100%. So, but these commercials, I mean, these companies spend millions and millions and millions of dollars to put these commercials out in front of the biggest fucking audience they possibly can on the night of the Super Bowl. And that commercial, that incorrect information goes out to everybody's house, to everybody's TV, so that everybody can see. And it perpetuates the notion, right, that thin is good, fat is bad, you're all sick, you're all stuck, it's a problem that needs to be fixed, and good for you, we have the solution.
All right, Ali, by any measure, you are overweight. Whether it's BMI, waist circumference, body fat percentage, Pick your poison. You are in the severely morbidly obese category. Now sure, the BMI is not perfect. It can give misleading numbers for certain people in certain body types, like athletes or people with a lot of muscle mass. But on a large scale, like when we talk about statistics, it's still a very useful and accurate tool. And the BMI is more accurate on a population level type analysis, rather than just trying to entirely scrap the idea that so many Americans are overweight and obese. Now, the claim about the BMI being racist. This argument is brought up again and again when the BMI comes up, because the BMI was developed using only healthy white men. But that doesn't mean we should throw out the whole scale entirely or ignore the fact that obesity rates in America are rising fast and rising in younger and younger populations. If we were to replace the BMI with something more accurate and more inclusive, the overall numbers and the overall value in finding that Americans are getting more obese wouldn't change that dramatically. But according to the Fab Fatties, this commercial is putting out inaccurate information. Now, is the stat itself wrong? Maybe. I mean, maybe if we were to use waist circumference instead, we'd get slightly different percentages. But we'd still find that the majority of Americans are overweight or obese. So is it instead the implication behind the commercial that she's calling the inaccurate information? The silent message that being overweight is bad and should be fixed. I'm thinking that's probably what she's referencing when she speaks of inaccurate information, but not entirely sure on that one. And no, your weight alone does not give you a full picture of your health. You can be obese and not have high blood pressure. You can be obese and not have diabetes. You might not have joint issues or sleep apnea, fatigue, or heart disease yet. But obesity increases your risk of having all of these. Just like smoking increases your risk for getting cancer, that doesn't mean that every smoker will definitely get cancer. It just makes it more likely, and that's how risk works. And because of that increased risk, obesity is a problem that needs addressing. I'm not saying that pharmaceutical drugs are the only solution or even the best solution, and I'm definitely not saying that Hims and Hers is the only solution. But rather than looking at the global $160 billion weight loss industry as the reason for people's inability to lose weight, perhaps we should instead be looking at America's $400-something billion fast food industry. Anyway, all that brings us to the next critique from the Fab Fatties, the song choice used in the ad.
It's a full-on lying on a huge platform. And then let's talk about your music choice. Let's talk about your music choice.
We're all overweight according to this very racist, scale of health, the BMI, and
then we're going to use a song calling out systemic racism.
Right. And therefore, it's also like, but we're going to keep that song playing the whole entire commercial because America should be full of, what, skinny people?
So the song that was used in the commercial is called This Is America by Childish Gambino, and it's actually the reason I had to do the voiceover because obviously it's copyrighted. But if you want to watch the full commercial, I do have links in the description below, as well as a link to the original version of the song that was used. And actually the music video for the song was an interesting watch. But for a quick overview, This Is America is a song that brings to attention systematic racism, gun violence, and the precarious experience of Black Americans. The video uses these scenes of contrasting celebration with chaos, highlighting how violence and oppression are woven into everyday life. It's a deep and complex sort of commentary on race and American society. But we're not going to be doing a whole lyrical breakdown here. Don't want to get too sidetracked. I just wanted to give a brief explanation on why the Fab Fatties are pointing out this irony, or what they view as irony, of using such a charged song, which calls out systematic racism, in a commercial that promotes a message about Americans being overweight according to the BMI, a scale that they claim is racist. And honestly, that's a bit of a stretch in my opinion. They are connecting dots between a song that's about racial injustice and a statistic about obesity, then calling the whole commercial tone deaf and contradictory. And now I don't know who on the Hims and Hers marketing team chose to use This Is America, or why they picked that specific song, but here's my theory. The chorus repeats the phrase, "This is America," which makes for a catchy and memorable hook. So while the ad talks about the broken insurance system in America, having Gambino singing "This is America" in the background sort of punctuates that message, maybe more for rhythm and familiarity rather than anything else. And the commercial actually doesn't use any other lyrics from the song. The background music plays, but the only audible lyrics are the chorus over and over again, "This is America." So I really don't think there was much intention to use the song's full meaning in this commercial. And of course, maybe I could be wrong. Maybe it is a tone-deaf choice. Y'all let me know what you think. In my opinion, I don't think that the marketing team chose this song as some sort of political statement. I just don't think there was that much thought put into it, honestly. Anyway, moving on, the Fab Fatties next take issue with who has the privilege to use these medications in the first place, pointing out that you basically need money or really good insurance to get them. And they even compare obese individuals not taking a GLP-1 medication to people with AIDS not taking their medications.
Most of these people are paying out of pocket.
Yeah.
Most of these people are paying for it out of pocket because insurance has deemed it not. I know my personal state employee insurance doesn't cover weight loss medications. And so to me, it's really exacerbating.
Big word.
Yeah.
SAT word.
Privilege, financial privilege. Those who can afford it are getting thinner.
Yep.
And using it to access more and more power.
But then it's also like, it keeps bringing me back to, like, you absolutely like blew my mind when we did that Oprah episode. And you talked about how like people are talking about Ozempic in a way that makes fat people basically complicit in their fatness, the way that if you were someone with HIV or AIDS and did not take HIV or AIDS medication, that you are complicit in your HIV and AIDS. It's not only, you know, like, you're sick, you have a disease. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you take this and fix yourself?
Okay, first off, comparing being fat to someone living with HIV or AIDS, that's pretty messed up. Now, for some context, back in the early days of the HIV epidemic, public health messaging had this moralistic tone, almost blaming people for having HIV or blaming them for not taking their medication. But that kind of messaging is not only unfair, but also harmful. It ignores huge systematic barriers like access to healthcare, education, or discrimination and misinformation. Worse, it fuels stigma and shame, making people less likely to seek help for this serious and life-threatening disease. So what the Fab Fatties are trying to do here is trying to say, hey, we all recognize how awful it was to blame HIV patients for not taking their medications, so don't blame us fat people for our obesity. And what this is an example of a false equivalency. Obesity and HIV are two completely different issues. For one, losing weight doesn't require you to take these expensive GLP-1 medications. Weight is influenced by many factors, including your lifestyle, your habits, your activity level, your eating habits. And saying that society believes that fat people are somehow complicit in their obesity because they don't take weight loss medications ignores the complexity of the issue and oversimplifies the personal responsibility of being overweight in a way that just doesn't compare to contracting a deadly virus. And the idea that you have to have money in order to lose weight is not true. You don't need to buy expensive groceries or go to fancy gyms to lose weight. And ironically, despite all their talk of access and privilege, at least one of the Fab Fatties have been offered to take the GLP-1 medications, not just for free, but to be paid to take them.
GLP-1s are at the place where you go get your Botox. GLP-1s are at the Smoothie Nature Shop. GLP-1s are at compound pharmacies. They're online in all these online pharmacies.
You want to know where else they are? They're in your favorite fat influencers' inboxes too.
Yeah, I wish I had my phone right now, and it's a shame that I did not prep to do this, but have I gotten emails from Hims and Hers to advertise, to get free products in exchange, and to get I have to go look. So I might do a little corrections corner, commissions on if I sell.
Yeah. I think I was telling you actually, Alyssa, at our a retreat a couple weeks ago, that one of the most recent ones I had gotten. Now, for context, right? So if you are an influencer on the internet, you likely have done some sort of affiliate work, right? So that means that you post links for brands and you get some sort of small commission from them. Most of the time that you're posting an affiliate link, I would say on average, you're looking at anything like 7-8%, maybe 10% on a good day, you know. If you have a better relationship with the brand, maybe you're getting upwards 10 to 20, I don't know. Most that I've seen is like 7 to 8%. The last email that I got from one of these companies, the first thing that I saw was 40%.
That's insane.
40%. They wanted to give me 40%. So I'm like, I already knew, because brands just aren't paying what they used to pay regardless of any of this, right? Brands aren't paying what they used to pay anymore. So as soon as I saw 40%, I was like, oh, they want me to sell weight loss. Like, I already know, like, because they're willing to pay for this. These are the only brands now that are reaching out to me and saying, I'm willing to pay you. Like, there was a brand that reached out and was like, we'll pay you $1,000 a month. Like, do I need that? Yes. Am I going to be shirking weight loss drugs? No, I'm not. But this company was called Fancy Meds. And literally their slogan, when you go to their website, it was like, oh, you're so fancy, that weight's gotta go.
That's so disgusting.
So if it's really all about privilege and access, they're making a very odd choice to reject that help. But of course, their refusal is more about the principle and messaging rather than lack of access. That said, I will give credit where credit is due. I do respect that she turned the money down and stuck to her morals, even though I may personally disagree with her messaging and her morals. And actually, we saw the infamous J-Bay do this too, turning down a large sum of money when offered to go on a weight loss med.
Have you been approached by Ozempic to sell to your audience?
Yeah, I've been, I don't think I can say Ozempic specifically, but I've been approached by these like agencies that are working with, and I probably get an email a month asking me if I'm interested in pushing the GLP-1s. And
if I may ask, how much have they offered you?
We're talking probably over $10,000 per post for pushing Ozempic.
For like a single Instagram post?
For a single Instagram post.
Given J-Bay's current circumstances, I could see her having a change of morals right about now. But at least for now, good on them for at least being consistent. However, while I can appreciate integrity, I do wonder how much of this is backed by genuine long-term conviction versus fear of backlash. Because when you go hard against something and build a community around that stance, it becomes very difficult to change your mind later down the road. Even if new evidence, new experiences, or even your own health forces you to rethink things. And actually, I have plans for my next video to discuss that topic a bit more in depth.
I think the more and more medical intervention that is pushed, and now of course we're seeing it through private industry, so we're getting advertisements about it so much more, the more it becomes a pressure point for fat people to address their problem, right? Versus kind of, again, this idea like people come in different body shapes, are they actually unhealthy, you know, like, so to not do it, you start becoming more and more what people see as like subversive.
But it definitely brings back up the argument, I don't know if that's the right word, of like, well, what does it mean disease? Like, the disease is only present if you're overweight, but when you lose the weight, you no longer have this disease. Like, no one's actually even defined it. So what are we talking about? I feel like we're just using these big words to like push a product.
What? Big words like obesity? Are they really questioning whether or not obesity is a disease at all? Obesity is classified as a disease by the American Medical Association, the World Health Organization, the CDC, and pretty much every serious health body in existence. Why? Because it's a chronic condition that severely increases your risk of contracting other diseases like heart disease, type 2 diabetes, stroke, sleep apnea, joint issues, certain types of cancer, and of course, all-cause mortality. This isn't some big pharma spin, this is actual medical fact. And the logic used here by the Fab Fatties is so backwards, it's laughable. Saying, you're only diseased if you're overweight. Once you lose the weight, you don't have the disease anymore. Like, yes, that's how a lot of treatable conditions work. If you have high blood pressure and then you either make lifestyle changes or take a medication to reduce your blood pressure, then no, you no longer have hypertension. If you're pre-diabetic and you lose weight or change your diet, you might avoid becoming diabetic. that doesn't mean that the disease was fake. It means that you treated it. What they're really trying to do here is reframe obesity as just a body type, something benign like being tall or short or having curly hair. But obesity isn't neutral. There's a difference between body diversity and a body that is in distress. And the women who are speaking here are not just a little bit overweight or a little chunky. They are each nearing like 400 pounds. Maybe, I mean, I don't really know. Once you get over like 200, 250, it's really hard for me to estimate that. But in any case, at their size, we're not talking about some abstract body diversity anymore. We're talking about real and measurable strain on every organ system in the body. Also, this whole narrative of they're just using scary medical terms to pressure people into buying this product is such a cop-out. Are there companies trying to profit off of people's desperation to lose weight? Absolutely. The weight loss industry has been predatory for decades. But pretending that any medical intervention is just some marketing conspiracy is intellectually lazy. If you're even using a base level of logic, it should hold up against facts, but it doesn't. And let's not forget, they're saying all this while also complaining that they're constantly being asked why they're not doing something to fix their problem. But at the same time, they deny that there even is a problem. This is a paradox that they keep walking themselves into. They want to be seen as these victims of societal pressure, but they also refuse to acknowledge the health risks that are objectively associated with staying at their size. You can't demand compassion while also denying reality. And look, obesity doesn't make you a bad person or a person deserving lesser care, but denying the health implications that obesity has and actively discouraging others from seeking treatment, that's not body positivity. That's negligence being disguised as empowerment. So while yes, people come in all shapes and sizes, some of those sizes carry serious health consequences.
I feel like we're just using these big words to like push a product.
And do you know where the term obese comes from? Aubrey Gordon told us in her book, what we don't talk about when we talk about fat. The term obese, a little fun fact for everybody today, the term obese comes from a Latin word, which I think everything does, but basically translate loosely to eat oneself fat.
Yep.
Which basically just means that obese people, the assumption is that we have all eaten ourselves fat. And I can promise you, she hasn't. You know, like, I may have. But I'm just saying, not the case. And that is a wild misconception that so many people, I mean, I could tell you about all the, you know, the wonderful YouTube videos. They're like, oh, well, if you just wouldn't sit around and eat 14 cheeseburgers a day. Okay. Yeah, no.
So their takeaway from the origins of the word obese is that it's inherently offensive because it assumes that people overate in order to get themselves to that state. But if you're constantly insisting that being overweight isn't bad and being thin isn't inherently good, then why is that assumption offensive to you? Like, seriously, if you genuinely believe that being 300 or 400 pounds isn't a problem, if it's just another body type, then why would you get upset at the thought you may have eaten yourself to that size? You really can't have it both ways. You can't claim that obesity is just body diversity and not inherently unhealthy, but also feel insulted when someone suggests the most obvious and common cause, chronic overeating over time. If being fat isn't shameful, then how is saying that you have overeaten shameful? And if you didn't eat in excess, whether by volume or frequency, then what exactly caused it? The laws of thermodynamics doesn't bend for your feelings. I'm not saying that every person who is obese eats 14 cheeseburgers a day. That's an example of a straw man, exaggerating and attacking a fake argument that no one ever actually said, because that's easier than defending the actual argument. The fact remains that obesity is caused by consistent calorie intake that exceeds calorie output. You can have a complicated relationship with food, and many other factors tie into why your calorie intake is exceeding your output. But if you end up severely overweight, then yes, food overconsumption was a factor. That's not oppression, that's just accountability. These girls, and many followers of them, want to be victims of this cruel world, but they also want to insist that their weight is natural. unavoidable and completely unrelated to their own behaviors. They reject the idea that they might have some personal responsibility in the matter, even though their entire brand is about existing proudly in fat bodies. And I believe that's a bit hypocritical. If you're so proud of your weight, then why are you so desperate to prove that you had no part in becoming that way? Why would it matter if it was the food that caused you to get to that size, if that size is perfectly okay? In this next section, we're talking about the Fab Fatties reacting to a video that was put out by Millie Bobby Brown, the actor from Stranger Things. And in this video, Millie is calling out the real and painful experience that she had with bullying and body shaming. And this is part of the clip from Millie that the Fab Fatties will be responding to.
I started in the industry when I was 10 years old. I grew up in front of the world, and for some reason, people can't seem to grow up with me. Instead, they act like I'm supposed to stay frozen in time, like I should still look the way I did on Stranger Things Season 1. And because I don't, I'm now a target. I want to talk about some of the articles that have recently released while I'm on my press tour, and some of the writers who are so desperate to tear young women down. One article reads, "Why are Gen Zers like Millie Bobby Brown aging so badly?" Written by Lydia Hawkin. "What has Millie Bobby Brown done to her face?" Written by John Eli. "Millie Bobby Brown mistaken for someone's mum as she guides younger sister Ava through LA." Written by Cassie Carpenter. Another article reads, "Little Britain's Matt Lucas takes savage swipe at Millie Bobby Brown's new mummy makeover look." Written by Bethann Edwards. "Amplifying an insult rather than questioning why a grown man is mocking a young woman's appearance. This isn't journalism. This is bullying. I refuse to apologize for growing up. I refuse to make myself smaller to fit the unrealistic expectations of people who can't handle seeing a girl become a woman. I will not be shamed for how I look, how I dress, or how I present myself. We have become a society where it's so much easier to criticize than it is to pay a compliment. Why is it the knee-jerk reaction to say something horrible rather than just say something nice?"
Okay, I agree with what Millie is saying here. What she was facing is rude and mean, and it is bullying. These journalists and reporters were basically calling her ugly for growing up, saying things like she's aged horribly. The articles that were being written about her, things like "Why is Gen Z aging so horribly?" are just plain mean. They are not critiquing her acting or her public behavior or her work at all. They're attacking her appearance, her face, her body, her makeup, and her fashion. That's not journalism, that's just bullying. And I actually agree with a lot of what the Fab Fatties say in response to Millie as well, basically just praising her and agreeing with everything she says. Just because someone is famous or in the public eye doesn't mean that they've given up their right to basic human respect. But more importantly, this doesn't affect just Millie. When a high-profile young woman is ripped apart for aging poorly, whatever that is decided to mean, the message trickles down. Young and impressionable girls see this too, and they absorb this messaging that unless you look picture perfect 100% of the time, they too are fair game for public ridicule. And I thought that this story with Millie was actually really reminiscent of what happened back in 2014 with Jessica Simpson. She wore this now iconic pair of high-waisted jeans with a big chunky belt that just wasn't the most flattering, and the media exploded. Headlines were thrown around like "Jessica Simpson lets herself go" and "Jessica's weight gain disaster" and all manner of trash.
Picture that circulated and went worldwide broke my heart. Like not the picture necessarily, but the caption. Like all the captions, and it was just viral.
Jessica was and still is objectively a beautiful woman, and in every other photo from that time period, she looked like a very average-sized, beautiful woman. But that one bad angle in that unflattering pair of jeans, that became the moment that defined her body for years to come. And Millie's situation really isn't that different. She's also beautiful, obviously, but she's worn makeup and outfits that, according to some, don't really suit her age and may even make her seem older than she really is. But so what? That's not a crime, and that doesn't make her deserving of being mocked and shamed online. And let's not forget, neither Millie nor Jessica became famous for their looks. Millie is an actress, and Jessica is a singer. Their talent is what made them famous, not whether or not they could fit in a pair of jeans or have the perfect makeup every day. So yes, I do think that this is bullying. It's mean-spirited and it's damaging. And I absolutely stand with Millie on this one. But here's where I disagree with the Fab Fatties, and where this chapter starts to take a bit of a turn. Because what the Fab Fatties try to do next is try to take this type of bullying, tabloids mocking a young woman's face, calling her ugly for aging, and millions of strangers dissecting her appearance. They're comparing that type of criticism to the criticism that the Fab Fatties receive in other videos like mine.
And I also loved how she said, this is not journalism, this is bullying.
Yeah.
Right? I want to say that to every single shitty person that's ever made a shitty video about us or any other fat person on the internet, or has made a shitty video about anything, okay? Like, it's not, you're not doing something big here, you're just a bully. Like, you're just a bully.
Right. Like, the biggest behavioral thing they can say about us, that they can say that we're doing badly, is that we're creating a place where, like, we're pushing it back against anti-fatness. And in their mind, that equals praising fatness.
Listen,
and
you said it perfectly.
I'm willing to deal with, like, if you think I'm glorifying by being an existing fat person talking to other fat people, like,
I make it look good.
Right. But, like, let's face it, most of what they pick on is things that we're talking about our lived experiences. And that is bullying. It's not anything journalistic.
Yeah.
I am going to continue to believe that I am completely invisible to the people that we discuss here. I truly don't think that any of them have seen any of my videos. And if I'm wrong about that, I don't want to know. But hey, if you want to call me a bully, that's fine. But I'm not mocking their appearance. I'm not calling them names. Usually. I really do try to limit that sort of thing. But I'm not attacking them personally. What I'm actually doing, and what a lot of other people are doing, is critiquing the actual information in their podcast. Their arguments, their claims, and their overall messaging. It's criticism and disagreement is not the same as bullying. If someone disagrees with what another person is saying and makes a video explaining why they feel that way, that's called a discussion, a discourse. It's how ideas are challenged and refined or thrown out if they don't hold up. What the Fab Fatties are trying to do here is reframe any sort of disagreement or difference in opinion as hate and bullying. And that's not just wrong, it's dangerous. Because it shuts down the possibility of ever being able to hold public figures accountable for what they say. These ladies are not just existing in their fat bodies or talking about their personal experiences. They're hosting a podcast and presenting their opinions as though they are informed, factual, and morally correct. And a lot of the time, their opinions are none of these things. They're riddled with misinformation, faulty logic, and oftentimes all they really do is appeal to emotion that doesn't really hold up once you apply even a little bit of scrutiny. If all they want to do is glorify fatness, then fine, they can do that. But if they're gonna make public claims like GLP-1 medications are some sort of capitalist scheme to erase fat people, or obesity isn't a real disease because it's only defined by weight, or that any questioning of an alleged experience is inherently hate, well, then people are allowed to respond to that. You can't put your opinions out there and then cry bully as soon as someone disagrees with it. Anyway, now moving on to the last topic, I want to discuss one of fat activism's favorite talking points: fashion.
One of the things that we also saw on the internet this past week or so was Samira sharing about Forever 21 closing stores, closing their headquarters, and she had gone viral a couple times with her discussions with Forever 21. So going shopping there and showing what the shopping experience was like with plus size folks. When they started taking plus sizes out of stores, she spoke up and they said, we want to talk to you about it. And she had a meeting at the headquarters. She consulted with them
for free.
And then they continuously went against what they said they were going to do. So yes, when they announced that they were closing, which of course is not great for people losing their jobs, it was like, well, no wonder. You've had feedback about how to better serve customers, and you seem to not give a shit about bettering it for plus size folks, and here you are, months later.
So if you don't know her, Samira is a plus size rapper and body positivity advocate. And it seems that she had some sort of meeting with Forever 21's corporate team after one of her videos about Forever 21's lack of size inclusivity went viral.
Do you know where the plus sizes were moved to? They're not in their section. They discontinued plus size altogether at this store. Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry. No worries. They discontinued it. Okay.
And apparently they told her that they'd work on it, only to ignore complaints and continue removing plus sizes from stores. And now that Forever 21 is closing down locations and scaling down, the Fab Fatties takeaway seems to be, well, no wonder. They ignored us and now look what happened. And Samira wrote a song about it.
Forever 21, happy Fat Tuesday. Ha, you was trying to be Tuesday. Now you got yourself in a Tuesday. And for your headquarters, it's doomsday. Ooh, without them plus sizes, you couldn't make no money. Took out them plus sizes, cause you was trying to be funny.
But long before this, Forever 21 already wasn't doing so well, with them filing for bankruptcy back in 2019. Closing down locations now, especially flagship or headquarters spots, isn't a consequence for ignoring fat customers. It's part of a long and messy financial unraveling that includes things like increasing rent costs, overexpansion, and backlash over fast fashion, and yes, some inventory missteps. Also, it's really important to note that in conversations like this, Forever 21 isn't a person. You can't sit them down and change their mind through a heart-to-heart conversation. It's a corporation, and its goal is to make a profit. That is the beginning and end of the mission. So when people like Samira or other fat influencers go viral for calling them out and then they get invited to headquarters, it's not some promise of social change. It's just a PR move. The brand is just protecting its image. It's not pledging allegiance to some movement. And if plus-size clothing sold well enough in stores, it would be there. And that is just the harsh reality. Retail space is expensive. Clothing for plus-size bodies requires more fabric, specific designs, and sometimes entirely separate production lines. If the return on that investment isn't high enough, if people are trying on the clothes but not buying them, or if online sales vastly outperform in-store, then they're gonna pull that inventory from the shelves. It's not personal, it's just business. And I get that it feels personal, especially if you've had bad shopping experiences or been excluded from brands that you once loved. But activism doesn't pay the bills of a failing retail giant. You can't expect a brand to continue hemorrhaging money just to make you feel included. So in my opinion, having Samira come over to Forever 21's headquarters was nothing more than a PR stunt. It looked performative from the beginning, and I don't think the brand had any intention of changing based on that conversation alone. They were gonna do whatever was best for their bottom line, regardless of that meeting. But to people like the Fab Fatties, what Samira did or tried to do, to them, her effort was significant, impactful, maybe even heroic in some way. They admire the attempt more than the outcome. And while the Fab Fatties frame this stunt from Samira as brave, selfless labor, this is still just part of Samira's brand.
So I have to imagine Samira, when she comes in hard, she's like, Belk, look at my experience. Macy's, look at my experience. It's not easy. You know, she's doing it again because she's tired of it. Same. And she has something to say. And now she knows she has sway. But that's not easy work.
No.
And whether people are like, oh, she does it because she gets people to follow her. People follow her because she does it. It's not the other way around.
Yeah.
People follow her because she's willing to put herself at risk by saying it. And she does put herself at risk with the companies, in the community standing, with opportunities she might get, and with these damn trolls, you know? So like, I really admire her for being willing to be that voice, because it's not an easy place to be where in business everyone plays nice because otherwise opportunities disappear.
Yeah. Of course, it's not always easy to put yourself out there, especially when you know that you're going to get pushback from online. But let's not pretend that this was just some purely altruistic act. This is how Samira builds her following. She gets people to follow her because her posts go viral. It's a form of self-marketing. People aren't following her just because she's making bold statements. They're following her because she knows how to get noticed. And when that kind of content gets picked up, shared, boosted by the algorithm, and written about in headlines, of course her following grows. It's a cycle. Visibility leads to attention, and attention leads to more visibility. And yes, she's risking some things like possible brand partnerships or public criticism, but she's also gaining many more things like her reach, her credibility in her niche, and yes, likely more income down the line. It's not brave just because it's public. So while I'm not here to just tear Samira down, I do think it's worth being honest with what this actually is. It's not revolutionary, it's just a smart business move wrapped in the language of activism. And the Fab Fatties go on to talk about a collaboration between Universal Standard and Anthropology.
So speaking of brands on their bad behavior.
Oh.
Yeah. Did anyone see that Universal Standard did a new partnership.
I did, and I have history here.
Okay.
I have some historical knowledge about this partnership.
Okay. Should I
keep going? We'll come back to my historical knowledge.
Did you see?
No.
Okay.
Or maybe I did and I just don't know.
Okay. Universal Standard rolled out some pieces that they did in partnership with Anthropologie.
Oh.
Yeah. These pieces are currently only available for purchase on Anthropologie's website. I don't recall if you can get them in Anthropologie stores right now. I'd have to look that up. But currently they are for sale on Anthropologie's website. They will be for sale on Universal Standard's website coming soon in all of Universal Standard's sizing, which goes from 00 to 40. So that will be coming soon.
I have to imagine if it is in Anthropologie stores, it'd still be the straight sizes because they don't have plus in stores.
True.
Unless it returns.
But it is coming soon to the Universal Standard website in all of their sizes, right? So these pieces are being made in all of Universal Standard sizing.
Okay.
These pieces are only being sold on Anthropologie in a 1X, 2X, 3X in the plus sizes. So Anthropologie has basically said, we do not sell beyond a 3X.
I'm sure there's something that they're like, well, we've only traditionally held these sizes, so that's the customers we have, so it only makes sense for us to list these things. Universal Standard has already set a benchmark of success in extending sizes. So when they make collaborations that diminish that work,
that feels
it diminishes the brand.
Yeah, because they basically said, we are the most inclusive brand out there. Let's partner with exclusive brands.
Yeah.
They basically said, we're so inclusive that all we can do from here is go down. So let's add some exclusivity to this. What the
Well, and I have to say, if they're going to do the whole, like, we're going to put these pieces in Anthropologie, we want to bring our market to Anthropologie, okay, you better have the exact same styles on your site in the extended sizes. If we're not going to get them from Anthropologie, and their timeline is earlier than the Universal Standard person, you're telling me not only can I not shop at Anthropologie still, I have to wait however many months to get it from you. So, like, just who is this benefiting?
The Fab Fatties are speculating a lot here, making assumptions about why Anthropologie isn't offering sizes beyond a 3X. They theorize that they're going to say, oh, well, we traditionally only carry these sizes, so that's what we're going to continue to do. But that's not based on any confirmed information. It's just the Fab Fatties projecting their own frustrations and personal insecurities onto a corporate decision. But Anthropologie is just that, a corporation. It's not a person, it's not some moral identity, it's not an activist's platform. And I'm sure that they don't make sizing decisions based on who they perceive as deserving inclusion. More likely, they make those decisions based on profit, logistics, and market demand. Carrying extended sizes, especially beyond a 3X, requires extra material, pattern scaling, fit models, quality control, and in-store plus-size sections often don't perform well enough to justify that investment. That's not me defending it morally, that's just a business reality. So while I understand the frustration in wanting these clothes in every size, everywhere, that's just not how most retail partnerships work. And speaking of partnerships, this partnership isn't about justice or making fashion accessible. It's about money. Both companies are benefiting from this collaboration. Otherwise, it wouldn't be happening. Anthropologie gets to boost its image with some inclusive PR, while Universal Standard gets something that they desperately want: reach. They've always branded themselves as a size-inclusive company, but yet they've still largely existed in the plus-size fashion bubble. This partnership gets their name in front of Anthropologie's audience, many of whom have never heard of Universal Standard before. And it's showing this new audience that Universal Standard isn't just a plus-size brand. And as for Anthropologie only going up to their standard 3X, I actually have a theory here. Universal Standard may have intentionally limited Anthropologie's access to extended sizing. If Anthropologie could carry the full 00 to size 40 range, why would anyone go to Universal Standard? So this way, Universal Standard still protects their market share, especially when it comes to extended sizing, driving new customers back to their own platform. So to me, this relatively limited sizing, at least when it comes to what you would typically find at Universal Standard, just sounds like marketing strategy. But anyway, I know that we've covered a lot here today, guys. So let me know down in the comments below, was the Hims and Hers commercial out of line? Are critique videos like mine actually just bullying? And does all this fat activism around fast fashion actually lead to change, or is it just noise? And one last thank you to our sponsor for today, coupert. Please check out the link in my description below to install coupert as a free browser extension. And make sure you never pay full price again with coupert. Bye.